Hello, this is Mrs. Brown from Research Triangle High School. The purpose of this presentation is to talk to you a little bit about the art of argumentation and some of the parts that go into a formal argument. The first thing to think about is that when you're evaluating an argument, you're actually trying to determine whether or not you're finding it persuasive. So to do a good job, you need to first of all understand what an argument is, that is when someone is trying to make a persuasive argument to you, and then take a look at how that argument is put together and look at the parts to decide whether or not you think it's effective. Now, we're all familiar with the term argument as in you're fighting with somebody about something, but we're going to be talking about argumentation from a rhetorical point of view, which means that we're going to be looking at some very specific and technical terms. So you need to kind of get familiar with these. The first is this idea of a claim. A claim is what the argument is trying to prove. It's what it's stating is true, and then it's going to follow this up with reasons or evidence in order to persuade the reader or to prove again that something is true. And the argument is different from a statement. A statement is just something that's put out there, but an argument is actually trying to provide support to show that that statement is indeed true. So we're going to be working with this particular definition of an argument, which is that an argument presents logical reasons and evidence to support a specific viewpoint. Now, there's 5 terms that I need you to get familiar with as we start talking about argumentation. The first is the issue, the second is claim, support, concession, and refutation. Now, the issue is the basic problem or controversy that people might be in disagreement about. The claim is the specific position that you or that an author is taking on an issue. Support is all of the reasons and evidence and details and examples that the author or you are providing in order to prove that this claim is reasonable and should be accepted. A concession is when you allow that maybe parts of an opposing viewpoint might be true, and refutation is coming out and proving exactly what parts of the other side are wrong or incorrect. Again, all using evidence. Now, are argumentation and persuasion the same thing? Not necessarily. They're obviously very well related. But in persuasion, you're actually trying to convince the reader or the audience that something is true by giving these supporting reasons and evidence in order to change the way the reader thinks or to get the reader to take action. You could have argumentation strictly for the joy of arguing. But in persuasion, you're actually trying to create a change in some way, either a change in someone's opinion, the way they think, or actually a change in action to get someone to do something. So let's break down these terms a little bit individually. The claim is the point of the argument. This is what the author is trying to prove and trying to get you to accept as true. Now, there's several different kinds of claims within a specific argument. The first is a claim of fact, and a fact is a statement that, at least theoretically, can be proven or verified by observation or research. So here's an example. Within 10 years, destruction of rainforests will cause hundreds of plant and animal species to become extinct. Now, theoretically, you should be able to take that claim and be able to back it up based on observation of how many trees are there now in the rainforest, how many plant and animal species can we observe, and then looking ahead, what will we see in the future. Now, where a claim of fact is something provable, Kenya is in Africa. I mean, you can go and look at a map and you can prove that particular thing. That's a fact that would be hard to kind of argue or get different people to disagree on. There are also claims of value, and this is where you're stating that one thing or one idea is more desirable than another. And claims of value are a little harder to prove because you have to show that the value that you're holding is what the other person should also hold. So, for example, it is more important to require graduates to have community service rather than high test scores if you want better citizens. So you're making a claim of value. This is more of an opinion kind of an idea, and you're going to have to back this up with a different type of evidence in order to prove it. And finally, you have a claim of policy. Now, claim of policy might involve claims of fact and claims of value, but a claim of policy specifically is saying what should be done. What is the actual action that should be taken to solve a specific problem? So, for example, to reduce school violence, more gun and metal detectors should be installed in public schools. Now, in this case, you'd have to have a claim of fact that everyone would accept that there is indeed school violence, and then you'd have to have a claim of value where we all think that school violence is a bad thing and something should be done about it. Once you have those two types of claims, then you can have a claim of policy that says the next thing that should happen is this specific action of having gun and metal detectors installed in public schools in order to solve what you're saying is the problem. Now, when you're looking at an argument, what you're really doing is using analysis. That is, you're evaluating it and analyzing it in order to break it down into its parts, examine each part by itself, and then look at how they all fit together to determine whether or not these claims that the argument is making are valid. Now, what kinds of things can go into your claims? These are known as your types of support. And this is usually reason, evidence, or emotional appeals, which ties into our studies of logos and ethos here, and pathos. Reason are general statements that support the claims, that are giving your background for why you think that this is a good idea. Evidence is your specific things that you are offering. Think like an attorney would offer to a jury. Facts, statistics, experiences, comparisons, examples that are going to show you why that claim that you're making is indeed truthful. Or these could be emotional appeals, and these are particularly valid when you're doing claims of value, but they can also be used in order to bolster a policy claim as well. And these are ideas that are targeted towards the needs or values that your readers are likely to care about, so the things that are important to them, and you target your claims to those specific ideas. Within these arguments, there's two different types that you can break it down to even more, inductive and deductive. Then inductive is going to reach a general conclusion from observed specifics. And we're going to notice a bunch of little tiny character traits and then kind of synthesize them together into an overall observation. So by observing the performance of a large number of athletes, you could conclude that athletes possess physical stamina. So if you watched a whole bunch of people playing sports, you might notice that, gee, they seem to be able to do this for a long time and to sustain this level of physical activity. So you could start to say that athletes in general should show physical stamina. And that would be an example of inductive reasoning. Now, deductive reasoning is kind of the opposite. It moves from the whole into the individual parts. So deductive is going to begin with the major premise and then try to figure out the more specific statements that go with it. So it might say something like, athletes possess physical stamina. Because Anthony is an athlete, he must possess physical stamina. So you're moving from the generalization and then trying to apply it to each individual case. And that would be known as a deductive example of reasoning. So before you begin to read anything, whether it's an essay or a piece of fiction or a speech, you want to look at some strategies for reading it. You start with the title. What does the title sort of suggest is going to be set up? Because a lot of times people in argumentation will state their claim right in the title. Then take a look at the author and think about the ethos of this. Who is this person? What are their qualifications? What kind of biases might they have? Look at the date of the publication. So how old is this information likely to be? And then think about what you bring to it. What is your personal bias? What do you already know about the issue? What opinions do you already have? Because sometimes you need to get your own opinions and ideas out of the way in order to be able to accurately evaluate someone else's claims.